couple of people said they came just because of the title of the talk, which is, I had fun inventing that title, Mindfulness, Concentration, and the Monkeys of the Sacred Forest. I'll tell you about the monkeys in a bit. I wanted to follow, Ruth gave a wonderful talk last week about equanimity, and I wanted to follow on with, in a way, a very similar theme. In our practice, we regularly hear these wonderful instructions about presence and peace and mindfulness and concentration. We're invited to be here, be in the present moment. And there's a sense that, we certainly come to our meditation practice with a sense that there will be more, ease, more peace, more just settling. When we sit on our own cushions, however, often what we find, especially if it's after reading the morning headlines or, having that difficult conversation at work or anticipating all those relatives that are going to come this weekend and spend the weekend, or imagining what the rallies in Charlottesville will be like, reading the headlines about that or thinking about what we should do, what our response might be. That often if we sit on our cushion after that, what we actually encounter is maybe not so much peace, not so much ease. We find our minds just kind of agitated and wandering about, and the monkeys are out. Ajahn Chah, you've heard the references from Ajahn Chah. He refers to that agitation, that activity in the mind as monkey mind, as the images and the thoughts and the perceptions and the emotions and all that stuff that goes rattling through our minds when we, if we made the mistake of reading the Washington Post and then sitting. That just all that stuff, or we sit down and we have a few moments of calm and then all we can think of are those 47 things on our to-do list that we haven't to-do'd yet. So that the monkeys are out there. Another image that Ajahn Chah uses, which I love, is he said thoughts are like flocks of birds, and it's sort of like one bird moves and the whole flock goes with them, and we notice that. We sit on our cushion and it's like, okay, we're supposed to be here now, and there's supposed to be all this peace and all this ease and all the image, all the ads, they point to all this wonderful outcome of meditation, and we go, I'm a failure, And when we're instructed to just let the birds go or let the monkeys go, each one of us may secretly believe that our teachers really don't know just quite how many monkeys we have, or quite how many birds there are in our own minds, or quite how unmoored our minds are, and that our teachers really, if only they knew that I personally am the worst meditator in the whole world, that I have more monkeys, I have more birds, they're less disciplined than anybody else's. And so we can get really discouraged. We can really have a sense of kind of despair about our own practice and about how things are going and what it is that we're supposed to be doing. I'm going to be talking largely about our own practice, but it also applies when we're trying to navigate something as challenging as the daily headlines about these rallies that are coming up, where there's all this stuff going on out there, just all this stuff. And, we go here, and then we go there, and then we think, well, maybe this, well, maybe that. And so that there's this, like, how do we navigate when there's all this stuff, regardless of whether the stuff is internal, entirely internal, or whether it's external, where there's a lot of stuff going on out there. And so this practice of ours is supposed to be helping with that, right? And it's supposed to be helping in a way that doesn't lead us into despair about how totally incompetent we are. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. And for starters, it's really crucial that we understand the difference between mind and mind. That we understand what we mean by mindfulness and concentration, and it's very easy to misunderstand. Mind can mean quite different things, and so we need to understand how we're using that in order to understand how to navigate. In the teachings, sometimes the word mind refers to the contents of our minds, to those thoughts and images and perceptions and emotions, to basically the monkeys and the birds that show up, that arise, fly around a bit, fly off wherever they go. So sometimes when we use the term mind, we're actually talking about the contents of our mind. These thoughts and images and perceptions and feelings and emotions come and go with neither our bidding nor our control. They just come and go. Something triggers them, they come, they last for a while, they go. It's not our fault that we have monkeys and birds in our minds. That this agitation comes up. And they cannot be managed by making thoughts and emotions and perceptions and images the enemy. We could sometimes notice that if we look really closely, we might have sort of a sense that really the way to navigate that clutter in our minds is some sort of monkey genocide, that really what we're supposed to do is kill them off. Or have a mind that is just sort of this pristine, empty, blank place that doesn't have any monkeys and birds in it, that doesn't have any unpleasant or challenging or difficult or confusing or angry or greedy or deluded thoughts or images or perceptions or emotions or whatever it is that's arising in our mind. So that we could kind of, if we look carefully, we can kind of notice that sometimes really there's this sort of push, a little violence that we have internally. Let's get rid of this stuff. Sharon doesn't have those, so what's wrong with me? That let's kind of kill these guys off. And it's actually not possible. So the reason you're not succeeding at that is that it's not possible to succeed at it. I'm going to qualify that a little bit because it's sort of possible. And the way that it's sort of possible is the way that when I play solitaire, my monkeys and birds calm down for a little bit. Actually, they don't calm down for a little bit. I space out. So it's possible to use meditation that way, to kind of use meditation as a way of just kind of taking some drug or kind of spacing out in a way that that's sort of similar to when I play solitaire, that we're just kind of spacing out. We're just not aware of much of anything that's going on. So it's possible to use meditation that way. And some people, sometimes people who look like they're really, really concentrated in meditation are actually hypnotizing themselves, are actually spacing out. And then when things really get difficult, especially like sometimes for people when things really get difficult in the external world, when their relationships are challenging or there's some difficulty at work or, some confusion about how to respond to world events, they don't know what to do other than spacing out. Okay? So, you can use meditation that way. But that's really not what we're teaching. And it has its limitations because sooner or later something happens that you can't space out with, or your capacity to space out, wears out. And then you're sort of stuck with whatever it is that's arising, whether it's internally or externally. Sometimes people can really space out certain qualities of emotion. I don't have hatred. I don't get frightened. And if we look closely, sometimes what we see is that they engage in the world in such a way that they're surrounded by angry people. So that the hatred all gets kind of projected outward and or invited there. But they don't know what to deal with it other than spacing out. So just to know that, it's possible to use meditation that way. But that's not what our teachers are teaching us and not what we're proposing, not how we propose to use the meditation. We can't make our minds peaceful by criticizing our minds any more than we can make our minds peaceful by criticizing monkeys or birds. I had a bird on my deck who was screaming at my cat, because she had little babies in her nest and the planter on my deck, and just was screaming at my cat. It was really kind of annoying. She would go on for hours. I was afraid her little heart was going to break because she was just so agitated. But there wasn't I'm not going to get her to stop doing that by criticizing her. She was doing what mother birds do. So it's not about making the world safe from monkeys. That's not what we're doing when we're meditating. Monkeys are monkeys, birds are birds. They're not the enemy, even when they arise in our own minds. When monkeys and birds and thoughts and images and perceptions and feelings and emotions rustle through our minds unconsciously and without any direction or any ability to navigate them, that's where we get in trouble. That we need to kind of have a sense of how do we navigate these energies internally and externally, not how do we get rid of them. Another whole talk actually will be, I hope at some point, about the ways that we try to get rid of the external energies. The way to deal with white nationalists is to shut them up. And I'll propose that's actually not really ultimately going to work. We do have to be skillful with them. We do have to notice when the behaviors and the words are horribly unskillful. But genocide really isn't the answer. So when there's no guidance or wisdom about the external expressions of monkeys and birds, the contents of our mind, that's where we get in trouble, and it can get pretty messy. So, imagining that our meditation practice is cultivating a mind in which there are no monkeys is just not true. Meditation invites us into awareness. This is the different meaning of the word mind. I said understanding the difference between mind and mind. Meditation invites us into awareness, into the capacity to step back and be aware of what's happening, so that we can be skillful with it, so that we can choose wholesome responses, so that when difficult things happen, we're not swept away by them, whether it's internally or externally. Another metaphor that often occurs, I think the Buddha used it and Ajahn Lee uses it, is about this, building a bridge across a rushing stream. And the metaphor is that the pillars that are on this shore really are the pillars of sila, or morality. The practice that we have of wholesome behavior. The pillars that are on this shore are the pillars of wisdom, understanding how things work. Sometimes ultimately that is through our experience in meditation, but it also can be through our reading. And it's what we do when we read and we listen to Dharma talks. It's like, okay, how does this work? Yeah? So those are the opposite shore pillars for this bridge. But the one that's the hardest to establish is the one in the middle, because it's the one that's in the middle of the rushing water. To kind of establish a pillar that's deep and settled and sturdy. Those are the pillars of mindfulness and concentration. That we can see I was going to use the image of the Oregon Inlet Bridge. I was just down there and I saw them. It's like, that is so cool. These guys are building this huge, big, sturdy, solid bridge. Well, oops. The image, with there. But anyway, that's what they're doing. They're trying to put these pillars into the ground in such a way that 110-mile winds don't disturb them. That they will stand in the midst of the storms. So the other meaning of mind is cultivating a capacity in awareness to be able to withstand all of the storms internally and externally that arise, and that we can still have a capacity to see what's happening, to investigate it, to see where suffering is, to see where the cause of suffering is, and to see how we can release that in a wholesome way. So our practice is really, it's about all three. It's about sila and morality, it's about wisdom, and it's about cultivating the steadiness, if you will, and the sturdiness of mind that allows us to withstand whatever the storms are that arise. Which brings me to the monkeys. I have a monkey story. I have a personal monkey story that I thought, well, it's a metaphor. Like all metaphors, it kind of collapses after a while. But it's a kind of nice metaphor, I thought. It's a metaphor from my travels in Bali. Many of you know that I've been going to Bali now for about 20 years, and pretty much stay in roughly the same place each year. And over the past 5 or 6 years, we've stayed in a place that is about 5 minutes away from the sacred monkey forest. And a lot of villages in Bali have sacred forests. There are places where a lot of sacred rituals happen, and there are places where they usually have a temple. In this one, there's a really beautiful temple. The forest itself is about the size of maybe half of it's about the west part of McIntyre Park, the park that we usually use. So it's about that big. Has just incredible old trees and hanging vines and mosses and beautiful old statues and just incredible light. It's really a kind of magical place. It's about 31 acres, so it's a good size. And you can walk through the monkey forest, and it's just absolutely beautiful, just peaceful and lovely. And in the monkey forest live about 600 monkeys. Wild, macaque, young, medium, old monkeys. In about 5 different troops, some of which sometimes fight with each other over territory or food or whatever. So if you go into this incredibly sacred and beautiful monkey forest, it is absolutely inevitable that you will encounter monkeys. lots and lots of monkeys. You won't see one monkey off in a distance. You will see, if you handle it badly, you will see a monkey in your lap or on your head. Seriously, absolutely. I have a picture of a monkey. I have two pictures, well, I have many pictures of monkeys, but I have one picture of a monkey literally eating the buttons off of my husband's shirt, and another one sitting upon his head with its hand in his eye. So, it is inevitable that you will encounter many, 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 many of the 600 monkeys. It's actually one of the attractions that draw tourists to the monkey forest. In addition to it being a sacred place, mostly they come to see the monkeys. It's also the case that the monkeys, they don't know about the gate at the edge of the forest, and so they often will be in the street outside the monkey forest, especially early in the morning when I go for my walk. So it's quite, so if I go for my walk in that particular direction, it is also inevitable that I will encounter wild monkeys on the street and in the sidewalk and in my path as I walk along. Now, for the unsuspecting tourist, which I was many, many, many years ago, outside of the monkey forest, there are vendors who sell bananas. It's not a good idea to take bananas into the monkey forest. It's not a good idea to take even a water bottle into the monkey forest. The monkeys are very aggressive. And if you take bananas in, and you have this beautiful image of feeding tenderly the monkeys your bananas, you will soon be disabused of that, because the monkeys will come shrieking upon you in large gangs, and they will rip the monkeys from your bag or your arms or whatever, and take the monkeys off to fight, or take the bananas off to fight with one another. So in the monkey forest, and as I go for my morning walk, it's important to understand about monkeys. It's important to not have deluded ideas about bananas or romantic images about how things might work. You have to understand the nature of monkeys. So that I know when I go out for my walk to be attentive to where the monkeys are, whether or not they are in my path, how old they are, that matters, and how I respond to them, which is to say to, not respond in a way that would make them think I was being aggressive. I'm very careful about how I walk next to the monkey forest. I'm very careful. Last time I was a little rude because I laughed at the vendor who offered me bananas. I said, no, I'm not going into the monkey forest carrying bananas. So that the monkeys are just there. The monkeys in our minds are just there. The monkeys in the world are just there. The difficulties in, summer rallies are there. They're difficult. They can be quite dangerous. Actually, in the monkey forest, they hire security guards whose job it is to protect the tourists from the monkeys. With the monkey, if somebody comes in inadvertently with food, that they have people whose job it is to try to protect the tourists from the monkeys. So our meditation practice is like that. Can we have a way of practicing with these difficulties, internally or externally, such that we're not moved about by them, we're not foolish about them, we're not kind of carried away, we're not running after them, we're not being unskillful in our responses to them, but that we have the capacity, like if I switch metaphors, we have the capacity like that bridge to have a steadiness of mind, to have a steadiness of concentration that enables us to see clearly what's happening and to choose wisely how to respond. So practicing with monkeys, whether they're internal or external, involves being clear about where we are wanting to go and why. Being clear about the goal of our meditation practice. Assessing our own energies in the moment. Sometimes I might choose to walk a different way and not go anywhere near the monkeys. I don't want to have to deal with them. Staying committed to our goal regardless of how cute the monkeys are. And that's true, isn't it, for our mind states? Sometimes we have very cute mind states, very appealing, or very cute ideas, very appealing ideas that we feel very drawn to. So staying committed to our goal regardless of how cute the monkeys are. Recognizing the dangers of engaging too closely, especially with certain kinds of monkeys. Recognizing that indulging, say, hatred or fear might not be all that wholesome, which isn't to say we don't have it, or we don't notice it, or we don't have skillful means, but we might not want to indulge it. Not being foolish enough to buy bananas to feed them. Feeding certain mind states that can really be unwholesome. That person that we're angry at and we kind of want to feed our mind states bananas. My metaphors are straining here a little bit, but you get the idea. Where, we just want to rehearse how angry we are. And staying calm if the monkeys approach or eat your buttons. So really kind of, just being able to kind of relax and see, okay, this has kind of got me right now. But I don't have to have a meltdown or kill the monkey. So that brings us to the meaning of mind as in mindfulness. And in English it's quite confusing because I even looked it up in the dictionary. And in the dictionary where it gave the definitions, it gave the two opposite definitions of mind. One had to do more with awareness and one had to do more with the contents of the mind. So we really need to know when we're listening, when we're reading, what is it that people are referring to? Because it really makes a big difference in terms of how we respond. So wise concentration is not about monkey genocide or about sequestering ourselves so that we're never aware of monkeys, our own or others, but it's about being able to have a stable mind and heart no matter what happens. Peace and freedom to choose wise and wholesome action in the midst of all of the worldly winds. Ruth King began and ended her talk last week, a talk that actually had a similar theme, with a song. And we've been talking lately a lot about chanting. So I thought I would end with a chant again this week. And I'd like you to think, as you listen to it, I'd like you to consider that it is referring both to what's external and what's internal. To this quality of mindfulness, seeing it, and concentration, the stability of mind that enables us to be with everything without necessarily, following the birds off when it arises. Okay? So it's with that in mind. Let's see if we can do this. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We're women men together. We shall not be moved. Women men together. We shall not be moved like a tree that's standing by the wall. We shall not be moved. Yes, city and country together. We shall not be moved. City and country together. We shall not be moved. It's like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. We are black and white together. We shall not be moved. Black and white together. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Yes, we're straight and gay together. We shall not be moved. Straight and gay together. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Well, there's no nukes, is good nukes. We shall not be moved. No nukes is good nukes. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Yes, split wood, not atoms. We shall not be moved. Split wood, not atoms. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not. We shall not. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be I'll post the link for that along with the along with the talk. So enjoy.